Silent but deadly. These are characteristics of the biological agents dispersed in biowarfare and bioterrorist attacks. As progress is made in the fields of biochemistry and biotechnology, weapons utilizing such agents become much simpler to produce and therefore much easier to use. Over the years, the threat of these attacks has developed into a prominent concern. Because there is a delay between the initial contraction of the infection and the appearance of physical symptoms, biological agents are more destructive than nuclear or chemical weapons. A study simulating the spread of a virus via travelers determined that in the best-case scenario, 2 to 4 nations would be exposed to the disease before doctors could diagnose it. It is important to study such threats so we can be prepared to protect ourselves against this violence in the future. Our project will detail the history of both biowarfare and bioterrorism, analyze the ethical debate regarding biowarfare, and finally, describe the outcomes of the regulatory conventions that have established protocols concerning biological weapons.
Biological warfare is defined as the use of toxins of biological origin or microorganisms as weapons of war. Biological warfare has been used throughout history and across the globe. One of the earliest reported uses of biological warfare was in the 6th century BC, when the Assyrian army poisoned enemy wells with rye ergot, a fungus that causes convulsions if ingested. In 1346, a plague broke out in the Tartar army during its siege of Kaffa. The attackers then hurled the corpses of those who died of the plague over the city walls. The plague epidemic that followed forced the defenders to surrender, and some of the infected people who left Kaffa may have started the Black Death pandemic, which spread throughout Europe. During the 1700s, biological warfare was used both in the Americas and in Europe. In 1754, during the French and Indian Wars, it's suspected that the British forces distributed smallpox-laden blankets to the Native American Indians who were loyal to the French. In 1797, Napoleon Bonaparte attempted to infect the inhabitants of the besieged city of Mantua with swamp fever during his Italian campaign. In 1870, German scientist Robert Koch changed the face of biological warfare when he proved that microorganisms cause infectious diseases by injecting anthrax spores into mice. The mice in turn contracted the disease. This laid the groundwork for newer and more deadly types of biological warfare. In 1942, the U.S. began an offensive biological program at Camp Detrick, Maryland. 5,000 bombs filled with anthrax spores were produced. But in 1969, U.S. President Richard Nixon signed an executive order to stop all offensive biological and toxin weapons research and production.
Of deadly biological weapons that either kill or intoxicate.
All U.S. stockpiles of biological agents and munitions were destroyed in 1970 and 1972. In 1991, following reports that the Iraqi government had biological weapons, U.S. troops were vaccinated for anthrax before entering the Persian Gulf War. After the war, the United Nations conducted its first inspection of Iraq's biological weapons facilities. Representatives of the Iraqi government confirmed to a UN team that they had conducted research into the use of anthrax, botulism, and other toxins.
When distinguishing between bioterrorism and biowarfare, bioterrorism is more specifically associated with attacks by a subnational group of people rather than the country or government itself. The firearms of these attacks are infectious biological substances, and in 2008, the National Intelligence Council recognized such assaults as more likely to occur than nuclear terrorism attacks. There are 4 major concerns that are associated with bioterrorist attacks. The first involves foodborne illnesses such as salmonella that work to sicken but not kill their victims. This method was utilized in 1984 in Oregon when followers of Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh attempted to prevent residents from voting in a local election. Initially, they planned to infect the water supply, but resorted to introducing bacteria into salad bars of local restaurants after their original plan failed. This sickened 800 people with typhoid fever and salmonella. 11 years later, the Ayum Shinrikyo cold produced a more deadly attack, killing 12 people and sickening thousands. They released the nerve agent sarin into the Tokyo subways by puncturing bags of the volatile chemical agent and letting it evaporate into the air. The outbreak of untreatable illnesses caused by lethal viruses is another risk of bioterrorism. Luckily, a professor at a local university recognized the symptoms and was familiar with the methods necessary for treatment of the unfamiliar poisoning. Finally, the most recent bioterrorist outbreak occurred in 2001. NBC News and offices at the U.S. Capitol received letters filled with anthrax spores. 5 victims were killed, including a fatality in Florida, and 17 became ill, as spores were also discovered in government offices in New York.
Inhalation anthrax. Inhalation anthrax.
Inhalation anthrax. Inhalation.
Substances like anthrax that can survive transport through the mail illustrate the final concern regarding bioterrorist attacks. The discovery of spores in multiple places across the country demonstrated the ease at which the biological agent could be spread.
Frequently called the poor man's atomic bomb, biological weapons pose similar ethical questions to those raised by nuclear weapons. Both are capable of causing massive destruction, and it is difficult in both cases to keep the destruction localized. Similar to the radioactive fallout produced by atomic bombs, biological agents can spread to infect civilians, livestock, and the disseminator's own troops. These weapons further dispel the traditional notion of risking one's life to defend a certain set of ideals like honor, courage, and liberty on the battlefield. The use of bioweapons depersonalizes warfare, since a soldier does not need to face enemy troops directly in order to infect them with a deadly pathogen. This type of weapon does not take effect right away and can lead to an unnecessarily painful or prolonged death. The dual-use dilemma revolving around developing technologies is also a source of concern for medical advancements. Modern technology could allow scientists to develop genetically mutated pathogens that are more resistant to environmental factors, making them easier to spread and use for terrorist purposes. However, the development of biological weapons is a direct violation of the physician's Hippocratic oath that they must take before entering practice. Doctors must swear that I will never give a deadly drug to anybody if asked for it, nor will I make a suggestion to this effect. Even if doctors aren't cooperating directly with scientists to develop the weapons, they have at least a fundamental knowledge of how such a weapon works and how it inflicts harm. They would be condoning the dissemination of the very biological agents they are supposed to be protecting patients from. It is for these ethical reasons that the production and use of bioweapons has been prohibited internationally since 1925.
The Geneva Protocol, the Biological Weapons Convention of 1972, and the Chemical Weapons Convention of 1992 set the tone for biological warfare and terrorism. The Geneva Protocol, which was signed in 1925 by 138 countries, is a treaty prohibiting the first use of chemical and biological weapons in international armed conflicts. Now, the production, storage, or transfer of biological weapons was not addressed in the Geneva Protocol. These insufficiencies led to the Biological Weapons Convention of 1972. This convention includes 170 states, and they agreed to prohibit the development, the production, and the stockpiling of biological weapons and toxins, unless they are for peaceful purposes. Now, this treaty did not include chemical weapons, which led to the Chemical Weapons Convention of 1992. This is an arms control treaty including 190 countries which outlawed the production, the stockpiling, and use of chemical weapons and their precursors. Simply put, the intention of the Chemical Weapons Convention of 1992 is to prohibit the use and production of chemical weapons and for countries to destroy all of their stockpiles of chemical weapons. As of January 2013, around 78% of declared stockpiles of chemical weapons have been destroyed. Now in the future, these types of regulations will become increasingly important as the nature of bioweapons have a higher potential for destruction. However, these advances will be paralleled with improved biodetectors with the capability to detect airborne pathogens. Until scientists are able to develop a pathogen capable of producing a large-scale pandemic, the greatest threat to society will be the fear of biological weapons rather than the weapons themselves.